Nice to have the opportunity to speak with you tonight. With me tonight is Amanda Lard. She was the project lead on this project. I'm Jim Pyers. Many of you have seen me before in this very room, maybe 2 or 3 times in this very room. Thanks for coming out on a cold night. Appreciate that. We want to thank the city up front for all the time and effort they spent on this project, the cooperation we received during this project. Performance audits are never easy, and they were very diligent in providing us with the information that they could, when they could, and we would like to thank them for that. There's some limitations I want to talk to you about tonight. Anytime you can't hear me, just say, speak up. You can't hear me, so I'll speak up. Okay. I may even walk out here. We do not do paper documents anymore. So if you want, you can go to the website, Auditor of State's website. That's the website up here. If you've got a cell phone, you can actually pull it down on your cell phone. That will take you directly to the audit report, the performance audit report. All of council has the report, the mayor, city manager, law director, finance. Right, finance has it, and I'm not sure who else has it in the city, but several people have it within the city. We are here to talk about the audit tonight. I can't go outside the audit. The audit's over, it's done, it's published. I cannot go outside the audit. I can talk to you about the mechanics of the audit, what we did, and I'll talk to you about the recommendations. I would like this to be somewhat of a community meeting because some of the other limitations that we have when we do an audit, we do it as a point in time. What I mean by that is 6 months ago you had X in your bank account. Today you probably have something different. Well, 6 months ago was when we did the field work here. Today the city may have done something different. The other thing I want you to caution you on as we go through these recommendations, there is not an entity that can automatically go, all of them are solved. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of effort on the part of the city. Some of them they're working on now. Some of them they're going to have to delay. During the course of this audit, several people called me. I appreciate those phone calls. They were talking about fraud, waste, and abuse. Tried to turn them over to the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline. If I was not able to do that, I contacted our fraud, waste, and abuse internally. I do not know the results of any of that. We turn that over to our special investigation unit, and once we turn it over to them, we have no knowledge of what goes on after that. So we can't discuss that tonight either. Having said that, those are the limitations. Just to refresh your memory, what we do is we pick peers that are similar to the city. We look at what the peers are doing. We look at what the city is doing. We use those as benchmarks. We use national benchmarks. We use EPA, for example, as a benchmark in here to find best practices. Governmental Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada. Our audit is conducted in accordance with general accepted governmental auditing standards. Somebody asked me last time I was here making a presentation to council, well, who sets those standards? And that's the Governmental Accountability Office, which is a federal office. And they set the auditing standards for all the government. So, at least I responded to that question. Having said that, I want to jump right into some of the recommendations, because I think that's what you're interested in is, okay, what's the results? Do, by all means, read all of the report when you have the chance. It'll give you some background information. It'll give you some key performance indicators. There's some things in the appendix. You just say, well, why didn't you cover this? Or why did you cover that? That will be explained in the appendix. Tonight, we'll focus on the recommendations and probably the city's response to some of those recommendations. And again, this is sort of going to be a dialogue. So if at any point in time you want to ask a question, feel free, but remember, our constraints are we're limited to what's in this document. city doesn't have those same constraints. They can talk about what they want to do, what they have done, or what they plan to do at some point in the future. Okay, first recommendation was to monitor capital asset records. The reason we suggested that, or recommended that, is because the city did record this building, but did not have it separated out into water, sewer, refuse, and general government. Water paid for part of this building, sewer paid for part of the building, renovation, I guess it's over there, and so did refuse. There's a difference between materiality and significance, and the financial auditors did not consider this to be material. In terms of the total financial statements, they didn't consider it to be a material amount. We, on the other hand, on the performance side, have a different measure. Ours says significant. Why did we think it was significant? Because the citizens and the council and the people that talked to us thought it was important that those records be accounted for in the proper fund. So, difference between significance and materiality. Does anybody want to talk about recording the assets? The city had the numbers, no problems there, easily done, just not necessarily recorded the way we think they should be recorded.
Yeah, if I could, just to relay the city's official response to that item, and Jim already alluded to a couple things. Since 2010, the city has taken additional steps to better account for capital assets. The construction of the city building spanned a period of 3 years. Jim's absolutely right. Our external auditors who audit each and every year of the city's operations for each of those years did not find that issue to be material from their criteria. 8 to 9% portions of the city building were paid by water, sewer, and refuse. After checking with our external auditors, they stated water, sewer, and refuse portions were immaterial, and they based it on the amount that the building had a 50-year useful life that was associated with the assets. However, we appreciate the Auditor of State's performance team and the perspective that they're looking at it from, and we in the city are certainly taking that recommendation under consideration in the future to record one asset as four separate assets in our system going forward.
Recommendation 2 was to increase the internal controls related to delinquent policies and procedures. Internal controls means basically we say we're going to do this, and we do this every time, just like property. Every time we do it the same way. We have controls in place to make sure that it's done the same every time. Areas that we looked at were delinquency, late fees, reconnection fees, shut-off notices. These were not consistent. We're suggesting that the city should analyze internal practices in order to verify that the policies and procedures are followed. Increasing adherence to internal controls will ensure the city is charging and collecting accurate revenue for services provided every time. Everybody's treated the same. And you have the control in place to do that. Did you want to respond to that? Or
Just
you want
quickly,
to respond to it?
if I could, Jim, just quickly, I think one of the most significant steps that the city took in 2014 was the hiring of a think that in the past, water and sewer billing office not having a manager directly in that office, directing operations, making certain that those policies and procedures were being followed, as Jim stated, in a consistent way. I think, quite frankly, the city suffered by not having a manager in that office. We do have a manager now, Lindsay Mont. She's seated behind me, and I think, Lindsay, you started in August of last year. So I think the consistency factor is being addressed. One of the most direct ways to do that is hiring a manager. I think the money we saved not having a manager was not did us a disservice. That was a good investment to hire a water and sewer manager, and I think we're reaping those benefits now of that investment. The issue that's and I think what Jim is again mentioning is doing our whatever policies we have, doing them consistently. I think the next step for the city then to look at is, do we like the policies we have, and do we need to change those, tighten those up, or modify them in some way? But I agree wholeheartedly with the Auditor of State's office that, you know, when you have policies established, they have to be implemented consistently. Absolutely.
There's actually two recommendations that are very closely tied together. The first one is develop policies and procedures for sending delinquent accounts to collection. And the second one is, let me back up for just a second. More specifically, Steubenville should adopt formal policies and procedures for processing delinquent accounts and sending them to a credit collection agency. The city should avoid accounts to a collection agency if they are able to file liens against the property in accordance with Codified Ordinance 921.05 and 925.22 and guidelines established by the Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 743.04 and Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 6117.02. That's coupled with recommendation, another recommendation you'll find in the report. Enforce lien policies and procedures detailed in the codified ordinances. If the city begins filing liens against delinquent accounts in accordance with the previously mentioned ordinances, it could result in a reduction in its dependency to use a credit collection agency and subsequently avoid paying 25% account service charge billed to the collection agency. Furthermore, the city would reduce risk of accounts being deemed uncollectible due to the statutes of limitations. So that is a recommendation we have in here. Other members from our county, from our team, the Auditor of State's office, specifically the regional liaison, has met with the county auditor. The county auditor and his staff are more than willing to work with the city to work this out in a smooth and equitable manner so everybody's treated the same. I don't know whether the city's had the opportunity to have that meeting or whether they'll have it when they have their finance director come on board.
Right, yes, and we do need to have that meeting and ongoing coordination with the county's office on that. I can say that the city has certainly taken to heart the recommendation regarding the liens. We feel that's the way to go, and last year we did submit a record number, I believe, of liens to the county, 264 of them. So I think that's I would agree that that is probably the most effective way to move forward. I see problems with the collection agency, like you pointed out, Jim. And, if we can streamline our process with the county, I think that will be best served by going in that direction.
This is a good example of when I told you there was a time frame when we did the work, and then the city sort of took over and went forward with some of our recommendations. All throughout this process, the city and the Auditor of State's office were in communication. They knew this was coming. They knew they should do something about it, so they decided to proceed.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. Using your numbers, 46% of the total 1,905 delinquent accounts is 870. However, the $750,000 is 58% of the dollar value. Now, if I'm reading between the lines, someone dropped the ball. Something fell through the cracks to leave these accounts go past the dates. Am I correct? Who was responsible for that oversight?
We did not.
Okay.
That's not really in this report about what happened in the past and who's responsible for doing what.
Okay.
What we're trying to do is take the situation, and you raise a valid point, but we try and take the situation and say, we're moving forward.
Mm-hmm. But I don't want to name a name. I just want a position of who should have caught this to save the city $750,000.
I think that would probably be best addressed by the mayor and the city council,
Okay.
not the auditor's office.
No problem.
And I guess I would jump in a little bit and say, and again, in moving forward, and I can reiterate my earlier comment, the city didn't have a water and sewer billing manager in a important office that deals with water and sewer billing. That matter, that's been corrected.
Okay.
And, I can't state enough how important that
fine.
move was.
That answers the question. Thank you.
Yes,
That's it. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
As a follow-up on that, then this new position then that we just filled, will this responsibility fall on that? Will she have the authority and responsibility then to carry that forward all the way through the delinquencies, the liens and however? Does that fall on that new position?
Well, it's certainly, that's our point person closest to all water and sewer billing matters. But, and so we will look for that person to implement that. That person reports to the finance director, and the finance director reports to the city manager. That's the best way I can answer your question.
No.
And we need to do everything we need to do to process the bills consistently and consistent with our policy.
So we have 3 steps then, is that what?
Well, I
3
think
departments
I think that is pretty typical for any organization. And, I guess we had 2 steps before. That wasn't good. Adding a 3rd step was a good one for us in terms of getting somebody really close to the operations and the processing of the water and sewer.
Just a question back behind, then I'll get you. Yes, sir.
Okay, first you didn't answer the question, is she responsible for the liens? And that would be a yes or a no. And you put 3 processes in there, but nobody's still responsible. The second is, how do you measure whether she's doing her job or not? Or how do you measure that we're gaining on the delinquencies? In what fashion? What do you measure that with? So there's 2 pieces of that question.
I'll take the second question first. Certainly we track the number of delinquencies, the amount of delinquencies. Those have been declining. We had Ms. Mont did a presentation at council last Tuesday, or this past Tuesday. Certainly, the reporting on those delinquents, the numbers of delinquent accounts, amounts, are we filing liens, are we doing that in a manner consistent with our policies? Those are all things that the water and sewer billing manager is responsible for. To answer your first question, I respect your question. I would disagree. I think I did answer. It's organizational. We did hire somebody who's directly involved with water and sewer billing, a manager of that office, but that person reports to a finance director, and that person reports to a city manager, and we all have responsibility for that. So, we all have responsibility. We're here to do it right.
Good questions.
Well, if we go back, then, what you're saying is that we create another position, right?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
To correct, shouldn't the city managers, the last two, have been on top of that?
When I came on board, I don't know the answer to that question. All I know is at the point where, as I recall, where I started, we soon thereafter felt that a performance audit was in order. That was council and administration agreed on that. We did move forward with that, and those results are this evening. We've been implementing those things that we've been aware of through the process. Certainly, again, I can't, the hiring of water and sewer manager was extremely important for the city. It was an area that, in my opinion, I was surprised that we didn't have one there, but we do have one now. So I guess I would, I'm not certain. I respect the question, I understand it. I'm not certain that it's helpful for us to move forward and make certain that we're on top of this issue, in my opinion. Others may have a different opinion.
I ain't trying to pin nobody down, but I'm saying before you
And I don't know.
it should have been addressed. And this forward is great, just like branding and stuff, but I watch a lot of surveys. And one of the worst things people are saying today in all government is called forward. They use that extensively. And they're saying that that's the most, it sounds good, but that's the most, the people, I'm talking about us people here that are coming, don't adhere to. Not that we don't do it, and it's a good thing, but this has been used extensively in government. And I think the people are getting a little bit tired, and now we got a buffer zone, which is great, which you said is great, and we spent more money. And that's all I've been seeing in the last few years is spend, spend, spend. And I know you make a lot of concessions, but just like the fire and the police, they got a 2.2 something raise in the last, what do you call it, contract or something. And then other people that are above that are getting big raises. And I think the city, if they're responsible and doing their due diligence, that they should look at that. This stuff about the top echelon, getting all these little bit of incentives, I think the people that work, like I was out Sunset the other night, the meeting, that was broke, them guys were out there freezing their butts off. They did a hell of a job. And I think they should be compensated before any of the top, I think they make a decent profit. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, if we can, I'd like to.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'd like to focus on the water utility performance audit. Sure, you can. Somebody else have a question? No? Okay.
Jerry, I just have one for you.
Okay.
I was asked about these reconnection fees. They said you pulled 16 of them, random accounts, and only 2 of them were charged. We say we're all reconnected, but only 2 were connected. Is that a problem, or Is that something that was turned over to somebody? I mean, how, do we know why? Do you know why? Does the auditor know why?
One thing for us to know why, it's more important that the city establish internal controls so that the city doesn't allow that to happen to the unit. That's what we're trying to do. Those individual accounts, we don't know. We did not follow up on those individual accounts.
That's what they asked me, if it was follow-up.
No, and the reason for that is we're looking that, A, this audit would cost a lot more money if we look and follow every individual account. But B, it's more important for us to come in, recommend changes going forward so that these things don't continue to happen. Like if the city wants to go back at some point in time,
That would be a city responsibility, not the auditor's.
right.
Follow up to that, you found that 14 of the 16 weren't paid. The city responded back and said, we always charge. And they wanted you to give them invoices.
We did.
So the city agrees you're right, that 14 didn't pay.
At that time, those are.
At that time, the 16, out of the 16 that you pulled, the city agrees the 14 that you said.
We just provided them, the city with the information. What we had was the information at the time. And the information at the time said they hadn't paid.
Well, it just seemed to me,
Yeah.
I mean, you said that 14 out of 16 didn't pay. The city's response is, we always apply. So that's kind of like disputing your finding.
Well, remember, this is a given point in time, which happened to be 6-7 months ago at least, when we pulled these records.
Yeah, but if it was reconnected 6 months ago, we should have charged them 6 months ago. I mean, we charged them today, that's still a problem, so.
Yeah, it wasn't charged at the
Wasn't
time we,
charged back then.
it wasn't charged at the time we pulled the records. Or the system would not allow the city to provide us with records that they had actually paid, which is just as bad.
All right.
Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Jim,
Could you, excuse me,
I want to apologize for calling you Jerry. Kenny called
That's
out.
okay.
I
That's okay.
don't know why, I always want to call you Jerry.
I've been called a lot. Trust me. Yes,
can you repeat that last statement again? About the system?
I've been called lots of things, or?
No. The system wouldn't allow you to see the data or something like that?
The question was, at the time, these people had not been charged, okay? That was at that time. Now, that's what the system showed us. Those are the records that were shared with us. If there were some records elsewhere in the system, unknown to anybody else, then we still have a problem because the system isn't providing accurate information on the billing. And that's what we're trying to talk about in internal control, making sure that we have timely, accurate information consistently all the time. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Does that make?
Perfectly clear.
Okay.
When you say timely, is there a time span for everything that you recommended? To, like a delinquent bill, to a notification, to a lien? Because are we doing the liens in a proper amount of time? Is there a recommendation that they be done in a certain amount of time?
Actually, the city has ordinances covering that. We're recommending they follow the ordinance.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I concur.
I'm all about going forward, and I appreciate the performance audits recommendations in that way. Not to be a downer, but I don't see how we can necessarily move it forward without recognizing where we went wrong. Last year in February, I stood right here at this door and I explained that I Googled Steubenville Water Policy and found ordinance number 921, and I presented it that night to council, and I also presented it in Columbus to David Yost's office because I was disgusted by it. And that was after a month's previous over at EGCC College, when we heard that there had been 3 liens in the past unknown amount of years, that there was somewhere between $1 and $3 million in delinquent accounts, that it was also an unknown amount, that we didn't have a water policy. So after presenting it then, both audits began. Both came out, the state audit, the Ray audit as well as this audit, both recommending the same thing, follow the law. In August 20th or so of last year, our finance director said that they were going to determine whether or not to come into compliance with the law. 2 weeks ago, we raised that question, and the question was whether or not we're going to follow that law again. That question was raised here in council about whether or not we're going to follow that law. I understand it might not be a good law, it might not be a well-written law, but the law is the law, and until we change it, I feel that it should be followed. Just going off willy-nilly causes us to end up with this $1 million or $3 million or $750,000 deficit. And I'm going to use the words dereliction of duty of elected officials, and it's spelled out in the Ohio Revised Code, that no public servant shall recklessly fail to perform a duty expressly imposed by law with respect to the public servant's office, or to recklessly do act expressly, or to do any act expressly forbidden by law with respect to the public servant's office. If we do have to, as you answered to the gentleman here in the red, that's a question for council. I would hope that council and the city would look at this and hold people responsible, or if we don't follow our own laws, why do we have any of them? I guess it's a question or a wish for council to take it to the next step of looking into this deeper.
Can I take a stab at that, Mark? Just Tuesday night, she gave a presentation on a policy, and we questioned that policy. I think everybody in this chambers did. And we all agreed that at our next utilities meeting that we are going to look at the ordinances and the water policies and begin to change them. So that is, again, I know you guys get tired of me saying we're not doing it anymore. Okay, we got that, we're past that. But we are all in something for the first time, and we are working on change. But in government, change doesn't happen overnight, and you should know that. I mean, we have to go through the process of what do we want to change. Once we start that change, then we've got to have 3 readings, which is another 6 weeks. So you have 2 utility committee meetings, which might take 2 months, and it takes time. And I know that that's not what anybody wants to hear, but that change is coming, and the change has been discussed just Tuesday night in this chamber.
I would also add, Mark, just as a follow-up, in that meeting, Ms. Mont confirmed that we are following the water policy. Our delinquents, the estimate she gave is about $126,000, $27,000, and we filed a record number of liens. So I have to, I guess, bring up. No one's not addressing these issues. Those are. And we hired a billing manager. I think those are 4 significant steps. Again, I would say, and Jim, this a lot of the report, some of your base year was 2012. 2012, 2013. That's just an is. Those are the base years. But I would say significant steps were taken in 2014, and those numbers bear that out. And maybe I'm missing something with some of the questions, but I do feel, and we're not, and I would say that the city's not saying we're going to go forward. We're going to go. We have gone forward. I think those are pretty strong numbers.
All I can say is in August, there's a written document that says the city's considering whether or not to come into compliance. That was on August 20th. That's the Ray and Associates document. And 2 weeks, it'd be 2 weeks and 2 days ago, I stood in front of council and asked how we were dealing with it. And I presented that letter that I found on the auditor's website. And your response was, we're waiting for the audit, we're gonna address it in 2 weeks, and you did. 2 nights ago, we did address it, and she did make her presentation. But prior to that, we've been waiting for over a year for any word on the city following their own ordinance and the codified ordinances.
I guess I just said we were following our own ordinance.
Next recommendation was to design and implement an interest schedule for a delinquent utility bill. What we're suggesting here is it's rather simple and straightforward. You pay your bill, I don't pay my bill. I should probably be charged interest so that you don't have to pay for it. It's just a simple concept. Okay? It's just rather straightforward. Develop and implement formal policies for account adjustments and write-offs. What we're suggesting here is there were several people that had the authority to write off for different things, and it really wasn't codified or put in a policy manual, if you will. So now we're suggesting that, okay, for example, if I'm going to dump my swimming pool, then should I be billed for water? Should I be billed for sewer? That should be in writing. I think it probably is right now. And who has the authority to say yes or no? So,
Well,
either that or they're working on it, I'm not sure.
Yes, both of us.
Okay.
We did pass an ordinance on commercial accounts a few months back. Other on residential that still needs to be put in place. But again, I would say that the way we've addressed that is following much tighter than in past years are the process that we have in place, going to the Water Reserve Board or Water Review Board or disconnecting or payment plans. So I do believe that situation is being strongly addressed. I would also say that, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I do think it's important to hire qualified people and people who can perform for all of you folks. That's why we need people like a water and sewer billing manager. That's why the finance director that will be coming on board next month has great expertise in writing policies and procedures. She's worked in a number of communities that have had, quite frankly, some serious and challenging fiscal situations, much more than we have. So, or to a greater degree. So it's the staff that we hire, people who work on these problems, that get them solved for all of us, and that's part of the importance of putting the right person in place.
Tim, I have a question. I was asked on our responses, we didn't respond to every recommendation, and I replied to the people who asked me that question, well, we accept the auditor's recommendation and we will implement it. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's why there's no response on a lot of these.
Correct. And some of them, like after recommendation number 7, we kind of have a catch-all response to recommendations 1 through 7. So, but you're absolutely right, Mike, where we haven't explicitly responded and noted that, and we concur. And most ones we respond to, we concur. We just wanted it to provide a little bit more explanation.
Jim, one more. Sure. Tim, I don't know if, because that was one of the calls that I got, was I didn't understand. You cleared that up for me, Mike, about we were agreeing. But on that R5, to develop and implement formal policies for account adjustments and write-offs, have we developed that policy yet? We don't have somebody specifically who does that yet, right?
No, that is under, we concur with the recommendation.
And we're moving forward. I mean, we don't have anybody, we didn't designate one person yet, or
No.
2 persons.
No.
Okay.
I'm hopeful that Bob, our new finance director, will be able to address, this is like project number project number one, or close to it. But again, she has great experience in policies, and I think that'll be great value for us.
And Bob, I'd like to point out that any changes to the water policy has to come through council for final approval, so they're adopted.
Another internal control, we're asking, recommending the improved utility billing internal control. Bear with me for this one for just a second, because what happened is the wastewater department reported roughly 2 million gallons, or 2 billion gallons of wastewater. The EPA had 2 billion gallons of wastewater. The billing department had close to 8 billion gallons, so 228. Obvious error in utility billing. It wasn't clerk. I shouldn't say clerical. We always blame things on clerical. It was a systems error, put it that way. Not necessarily a computer system, but someplace the system broke down. We understand that the systems do break down. We don't think it should be a performance audit that finds this type of error. This should be, again, an internal control issue, that these errors are caught the next day, if not within, or 2 days out. And so we're recommending that they have internal controls to catch those types of errors, because those errors should not exist. Basically, we're talking between the sewer plant and the building department. Those types of errors really should not exist.
Hey, Jim, I'm going to violate my own statement a little bit here. That happened in 2012. Your team discovered that in performance audit in 2014. Speculation, maybe you can't speculate, but I wonder if the audit, one of our yearly audits, the city should have caught that in 2012. Well, it should have happened in 2012. There you go. But we should have caught it sometime after 2012, in 2012. But would that have popped up on an annual audit? Or
It wouldn't have popped up on a financial audit because it's not dollars, gallons. And gallons
yeah.
is very important to performance audits because it's a unit of measure. The unit of measure for finance is dollars. Okay?
Excuse me. Since that happened in 2012 and everybody knows about it, is there something in place now that you look daily to see that the gallons are matching?
I don't know specifically, and I don't know, Lindsay, would you be on?
Now, since me coming on, we are working more closely with the water superintendent so that we make sure that those numbers are more accurate.
How often do you check?
Well, with me coming on in August, me and Chuck, we've been working on that. Chuck is also not he's water and wastewater. Right, yeah. So, I don't want to say we work on that every day, but we try to meet at least weekly or every other week to make sure that those numbers are the correct numbers.
So that's going to be a procedure that's put into place so that's never happens again.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Do any of those numbers correlate directly to dollars? That's the first piece. The second piece is, I think in 2012, we were still selling water to other communities, Wintersville or Mingo or Toronto or something. And is that part of this?
No, because actually what happened is the utility billing system said that there was more water produced than the plant said that there was produced. wastewater, I'm sorry. There was more wastewater. The billing system said that there was more wastewater treating than was actually treated by the wastewater plant. So it was definitely a systems breakdown, if you will, in terms of accuracy. Okay? It's very important, at least to us, it's very important that those internal controls are in place so that you can catch those discrepancies in terms of gallons. Because gallons are operations, gallons are people, gallons are a lot of things, chemical treatments, their electric usage. So it's very important when you come to units of measure to have gallons correct, as well as the dollars. We recommend the city implement formal policy on water meter inventory and storage. It almost goes without saying, when the new meters come in, they should be inventoried. They should be assigned to a specific location. If it's in the warehouse, that's fine. If it's on a residence, then they should be identified. You have meters such and such, and that's for control purposes, so that all those meters are accounted for. Meters sometimes have a tendency to develop lights. And also, you want to keep track of those meters in terms of age, where they're located, why you may be having a problem with a certain location. All sorts of different reasons why you want to keep track of your water meter inventory.
Hey, Jim, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but we made progress in that area, and I'd really like Lindsay to address
Right,
that.
so since the audit had been done in 2000, pulling the information from 2012, with me coming on, I was able to go into the systems and see that information is actually being tracked now. And it has been prior to me coming on. Tracking numbers were put into our systems, and we are tracking each meter as it goes into a home and it comes out of a home.
So, internal controls have been established.
Correct.
Develop and implement formal meter calibration process. Why is this important? You have water being processed at the plant. You have water being billed at the meters. You should be able to identify the difference between the twos of, okay, I'm treating 1 million gallons out of the water plant. Roughly 900,000 would be acceptable to be billed, because there is leakage in every system, roughly 10 to 12%. If you don't calibrate either meters, then you have no idea how much is in the system and where it's being lost. Now, the city has calibrated, or did calibrate during our performance audit meters at the plant. We ran into some meter calibration situations at the residence level, and we think the city should start to address those calibration problems. Specifically, I think the city is installing meters.
Last year, we've been working with Neptune since 2013. We replaced our commercial meters in 2014. 2014. And we're currently in the process of phase 2 of doing our residential meters. We anticipate that those meters will be changed out by the sometime in the third quarter of this year, I would anticipate. Obviously, that's imperative for the city. Our meters are very very.
The difference between here's the water plant. Here's the residence. Here's the water pollution control plant. Obviously, it goes like that. There's an explainable difference here. Usually, as I say, it's 10 to 12%. The explainable difference between here and here is what we call I&I, infiltration and inflow. All these meters have to be calibrated so that you know whether you're within tolerances or not. That way you can determine where your leaks are. That's why it's important to have these meters calibrated.
And I would add, just for the citizens, the meters typically, an industry standard, they tend to lose their accuracy after about 15 years. Cities meters, I don't know what an average age would be, but
They're old.
they're probably double that or more.
Right, right.
So that's the importance of that project.
What's the recommendation on how often this calibration should be done?
There are AWWA standards on exactly what size meters should be calibrated and when. And the city could adopt those policies. In other words, 6-inch meters should be, I believe it's every year. Residential, I think, you check the calibration, statistically check the calibration. I don't remember how many years, but every so many years, you statistically check the calibration to make sure your residential meters are still operating correctly.
Is there any recommendation by the auditor that policy be put in place as to who owns the meters, whether the users of the water or the city owns the meter and who pays for them?
No, we did not address that.
Should there be such policy in place?
We did not address that in the audit.
Yeah.
Okay, so, the residential meters, they are owned by the city. The commercial meters are owned by whoever owns the property or whoever rents that property. And just to go back a little bit, we did find that some of the meters were actually not dole head meters. And when it's a turbine meter, we find that when the usage is very high in the meters that we currently have, it's only picking up the large consumption, which is usually about 20,000 gallons or more. And our meters were not actually picking up usage under those 20,000 gallons because they weren't turbine meters.
Yes, sir.
When you started, you said something like 8 billion gallons? I
That's
want
per
to get
year.
that straight in my mind. 'cause
That's
I
for a
know
year.
Between billion and a million is a big gap.
Well, okay, yeah. They recorded like 2 billion versus 8 billion. And there was a huge mistake, and I can't remember what it was, but there was a huge mistake in the system. And it was an obvious mistake. The problem we had is nobody picked up on that obvious mistake.
I mean, billions and millions are big gap.
Oh, yeah.
You know, anybody think it's like $1.10? No. Big gap.
Yeah, again, we're talking about usage that never happened, but,
Okay.
okay.
I just want to get it straight. I get my millions mixed.
We're recommending that the city apply utility payments first to refuse charges. Specifically, we have a city that has that policy. The reason the city does that, has that policy, is because they first put it on the refuse bill, pay off the refuse bill because you don't want garbage to rush the city, so you want to continue to pick it up. Then it goes to the sewer bill, and then lastly to the water bill. The reason they put it on lastly to the water bill is because they can shut the water off. Enforce compliance. We are recommending that you update the city update the utility billing system to incorporate county parcel numbers. Every parcel in the city, if it's got a building on it, probably should have some sort of a utility billing charge. So if you can cross-reference those, it's a great way to catch where there may be some water usage that A, doesn't have a meter, or is receiving sewer services, or refuse services, that maybe somehow got missed in the process. So we're recommending that those be cross-checked. You can also use this for other things, but
We have started that, and it's an excellent policy. Including any idea how far along we are with it?
I can't give you an exact number, but I know a majority of the accounts that we do go into do have parcel numbers now, and I think that was actually started before I actually came on in August.
we're suggesting that the city updates the strategic plan, so they have a longer-term plan and goals and objectives for the finance operations. When I say finance operations, I don't mean the finance department. What should be the returns, et cetera, for the utility building, or utility offices. One of the other ones was eliminate 2 refuse operator positions, compare peers. When we did that, we saw that there was an opportunity at the same level of technology, if you will, to maybe reduce 2 people. If you go to the automatic trucks, you may be able to reduce as many as 6.
Yeah, on that item, the city certainly willing to consider that recommendation. I think that I think the auditor's office is absolutely right. At some point in time, when we're able to introduce greater efficiencies in technology in the way we collect refuse, I would agree wholeheartedly. That's how we need to ultimately get to, and not years and years out, but work towards that those technological improvements as the budget will support. Having said that, we do use and are planning to utilize more our refuse operators for doing street department work. So it's not that they're just doing refuse. So that was the only thing that we, the city, wanted to interject with that recommendation, is that I think we get perhaps more productivity, if you will, because they're doing more activities than maybe some communities where refuse workers are very much, they do refuse. Our refuse workers don't do refuse, just refuse. They, if they have a CDL, they're out clearing the snow, and so I think that we're a little different maybe, or perhaps in some of the peer communities, but in essence, ultimately, we do need to work towards more technological efficiencies. Absolutely.
Now, the city, I'll interject something here. The city does not necessarily have to agree with all our recommendations. They may have reasons for not agreeing with all our recommendations. And the reason I bring this up at this point in time is the city does not necessarily agree with the following recommendation. That's okay. Ours are recommendations. There may be things that we don't see that are going on. For whatever reason, quality of service, any number of things may happen. The city may disagree. This happens sometimes with our clients every place, schools, cities, counties, whatever. We're suggesting that compared to the peers, the city could probably eliminate 2 wastewater line management staff. Compared, yeah, wastewater line maintenance. So, I'll let the city wants to address that, or I can just move on.
I would just add, and I think that Jim, you put it very well, all these recommendations, we are certainly reviewing, and most of them are ones that I believe we need to. The only thing preventing us from putting them all in place would be the number of hours in the day. But we need to prioritize the ones that are most impactful, most important, and those need to be implemented. If they haven't already, we need to complete that implementation very quickly. The areas of the reducing the staff, again, I already discussed the refuse positions. The wastewater line maintenance positions are somewhat similar. Our wastewater does a lot of work in water to help support that department. Our water department, when needed, would support wastewater. And they actually, both departments are kind of the third rung if we, in a major snowstorm or something. Anybody with a CDL in those departments are going to be working to support our snow and ice management operations. So it may be too strong to say we took exception with those recommendations. I think we understand that we, at this point in time where the city's at, we need to use our different positions and employees where they can best be needed. We don't have in my opinion, have the level of staffing in each of those departments, M&R or street sanitation, water and sewer, that you would typically see in a city, and do a higher level of service. But what we can do now is have a flow, more flexibility. That's how I would say it, and be able to use those employees in different ways, in different uses, in different activities. So that's my hesitation to accept reducing employment in either refuse or wastewater. That's where that stems from.
I would add on refuse, by the city going to 4 days, we have, in effect, have adopted this recommendation because you cut refuse by 20%. 20% of 11 people, we've got, well, it's a little over 2, but so we are cutting refuse by going to a 4-day work week and having that 5th day. It's just, so I think that one is being adopted.
Yeah, in a kind of a different way.
In a different way.
Yeah,
It still works for
that's
us, but we've cut our refuse by 20%. And we took and increased somebody else by 20%.
And reallocated that to street.
And he's basically saying we should cut refuse by 20%. And we are by going to the 4-day work week.
I wouldn't argue with that. I agree.
Well, Mike, you're absolutely right in that theory, if we follow through on the funding source of that. If that revenue continues to come out of the enterprise fund, the sanitation fund, then we really didn't accomplish that, we reassigned them. But on that 5th day, as we outlined and negotiated with the ASME union, if that 5th day they are working in M&R or another division, not actually refuge or recycling or whatever, then we could take it out of the general fund.
Correct.
Then we did accomplish it.
Correct.
But if they continue to receive their funding source from the sanitation fund, we really didn't just reassign them, but not dollar.
Right, but we discussed if they're going to do street work, they're coming out of the general fund.
It would come out of the general fund.
There'll be a lot finding against us.
Or they could help Parks and Rec.
Right.
Right.
So it'll call it general fund and
Right.
I look at it.
Right.
That's correct.
So we did do it.
Working on it.
In the line maintenance staff, how many shutoffs do they do a month?
Line maintenance people don't do line service They don't do the shut-offs. We have, the meter department does. We have two gentlemen that does the shut-offs. The line maintenance people does the infrastructure, replacing of broken water lines or sewer lines.
How many shut-offs are there a month?
A month, I would say we probably have an average of 20 a day. Well, I wouldn't say they're all shut-offs. I think they have an average of 20 work orders a day. I would say we're around 5% in a month of people that we actually shut off.
The last two recommendations deal with the utility delinquency review board. Just give you a little background so everybody understands. These are volunteers. These are volunteers. They give up their time to, as they expressed it to us, try and collect the money owed to the city in the best way they can. So that's what they expressed to us was their mission. They are volunteers. So keep that in mind as we go through these next two recommendations. Develop formal policies for the utility delinquency review board. We noticed some inconsistencies. Let me rephrase that. We noticed some what appeared to be inconsistencies to us in how the utility review board might make payment plans. We're suggesting that there should probably not be inconsistencies. That's for city council to determine at some point in time, because we're recommending that they help develop the policies for the utilities review board. The other recommendation is increase the transparency of the utility review board. In other words, their minutes, they should keep minutes. Those minutes should be a matter of public record. This will also help communication with the public and eventually should make the utility review board's job just a little easier. I mean, that's my opinion. But with transparency, they should be, it will establish a better communication with the community. Those are the two recommendations that we have regarding the utility review board.
On the transparency issue with the utility, are they addressing that? Are they going to post the minutes possibly on the city website?
That was the recommendation.
No, I'm saying, are you addressing that particular recommendation?
These have been presented this evening. Obviously, we're going to sit down with the review board and discuss all of these, and I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be on the website.
I'll add to that. In order for them to be transparent and their job to be easier, we need to make sure that our policies and procedures are where they need to be first. That allows them to kind of go through a checklist and make sure that those policies and procedures are being followed for each individual person, which then allows us to do the minutes and post those. But without those, it makes it hard to take each individual account and address that accordingly.
Then I can back up and say, is that being addressed? They're going to implement policy and procedure?
Right, all policies and procedures, I think, within the utility department are going to be reviewed, which we discussed Tuesday. So there's a lot of things that we need to do to make sure that it makes it easier for them to do that.
The utility review board does have some unwritten policies, so that's probably where some people might want to start. They do have some.
They do?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. If you don't show, as an example, if you're a no-show to the utility review board, you're done.
Wait, say that again?
If you're a no-show to the utilities review board, for example, you don't get an appeal. That's it.
Oh, well, that I can understand.
You know, but there's other examples. That was just an example of a policy that they had.
And also another policy that they adopted within the last 3 years is if you don't live up to your commitment, your payment plan within your arrangement and your period, even if you miss one, you cannot receive another hearing. You have to pay in full then thereafter.
Thank you.
Behind you,
With that last statement, then how do you measure that? Do you have a list that, you know, who missed their payment and now they're,
Yes.
okay.
We do keep a list and we update it every month. Who doesn't show, they don't get a second. Because what happened in the past and what we experienced after the court ordered us to form a utility review committee, and we did. Once you request that hearing, until your hearing, we can't turn off your water. And that's really the court. So what people were doing was they was requesting a hearing, oh, I'm sick, I can't come, or to buy another 30 days before the next month hearing. So the board approached us and says, listen, this is happening too much. This is now the third month this person canceled and all. They wanted to establish, and we said, absolutely, let's establish that policy.
Okay, then with that statement, then is that part of the ordinances about shutting water off? You have to do a review board or they shut
No,
your water
it is
off,
not.
or you don't do the review board, they shut your water off?
If you're delinquent, your water could be shut off. If you want to try to prolong that, you could request a utility review hearing for 30, until they meet. It could be 3 weeks, but within 30 days. But it's not required to have a hearing before we shut it off.
Okay. Two questions. The first one, is it the purpose of the review board to help folks who are going to get their water shut off, or is it to help alleviate a situation where liens are already leaned
No,
against the
It's
property?
not even the liens. Really, the utility review board is to review hardship cases. You could have had a leak that you weren't aware of. You could have been on vacation or something. They were supposed to be hearing hardship cases. Or sometimes people have financial difficulties in paying a bill, and if you come in and want to make an arrangement for 60 days, 90 days and all, you would have this hearing, you know. It's just that once our citizens got accustomed to this review board, they start making these requests to try to circumvent the payment or payment schedule to delay what ultimately would happen would be the shutdown. I hate to say it this way, but when people learn the system and get used to it, they know how to use the system.
So if a lien's already been established, it's not anything for the review board to deal with?
No, there's a case, I think, pending right now, if I'm not mistaken, that our law director is referring to the Utility Review Commission on a lien that was placed on the property by a different owner. The property was sold, okay? The new owners just received the notice of the lien that was put in there, because don't forget, the county places the liens every September. We went through this already, had a lot of discussions, and that's why the auditor's office, the county auditors, has pledged working with the city and all to keep a list there, so when these titles are transferred and all, it's going to be up to the new owner and all to check this list if there's any liens that may have not been recorded yet. But there is a case right now that a new owner of property received, I believe, $800. $800. There was a lien against the property, and the new owners are questioning it. It wasn't recorded. They didn't get it until now. These tax bills are coming out and all. If we would forgive that lien, and obviously our law director can't do that and refer it to the utility board. Now, that property owner, I don't believe has made that request as of yet. They have not made that request as of yet, but I believe it will be coming.
And second question, is the issue of transparency going to conflict with Ohio law in that review board? Because I don't think you're allowed to, I believe that the privacy of the utility holders and their accounts in Ohio law, is that right or no?
I would yield to the law director, but as far as...
I guess we rephrase the question, are we legally allowed to post delinquent accounts? And I thought the answer had been no a year ago, that we're not allowed. How is that going to work with the review board?
I think the law director is reviewing that. To my knowledge, my utility bill in my hometown is a matter of public record.
Ours isn't. I requested from the law director, and they are not public record.
Wait, I think we ought to let the law director, he's not here this evening.
He's not here, yeah.
No, that's who I asked.
He needs to clarify that.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I'm yielding to
these
the law
are-
director. I'm just telling you what's in my opinion.
I do know these are public meetings, public proceedings, public minutes, transparency. So, but I think it's unfair to speak for the law director who's not here.
I have a quick question, and it could have been discussed, and I wasn't here when it was discussed. Is it typical in the state of Ohio that the lien would be attached to a property so that even though a renter is the one who has used the water, could renege on that bill, I mean, just not pay it, and so he is not the one who is penalized, but the landlord is. So my first question is that typical for the state of Ohio? And then the second thing is, doesn't that put the city in a very difficult position financially if there are one or numerous liens against a property that really won't be sold for potentially years? How will the city make up for that deficit? Because it could be years before that bill's resolved.
Second part, I really, is a collection process that I think we don't address in here. But again, the county auditor is more than willing to work with the city on addressing the lien situation. He's made that perfectly clear to the regional liaison for the Auditor of State's office. In fact, his staff did, and so was the treasurer actually over there. I just happened to be in attendance at that meeting. The first question was, we went and found examples of people who are using the lien processes, and that's when we started talking with the county about assisting the city in this lien process. So, is it commonplace? There are cities in Ohio that are doing this currently, and that's where we found our example. And that's how we talk to the city and the regional liaison, talk to the county auditor, and that's why the county auditors started thinking, well, wait, let's see if we can't work this out. I mean, he was very positive about it. We want to work this out to the benefit of everybody. So, yes, it is. I guess it's commonplace. It happens. How common? Is it 50-50? Don't know. Never taken a city survey of the city.
Our own county attaches it to the property owner. So, and other cities across the state of Ohio all do also. On your second part about how you can stop a property owner from running lien after lien after lien, and we never get sold in the cities that would be out of water. Most cities that I've researched, they stop it by, once the tenant is delinquent, the water is shut off. And no water gets turned back on, even for a new tenant. And that would stop somebody from just leaning. Now, Gary's not here. I think he's of the opinion we can't do that because of the consent decree. I'm not sure it really says that. It talks more about due process. I think we can do that. And Gary had a court case that he sent to all of us where that city, was doing the exact thing. It was upheld by a public tax court or a public court in Ohio, so.
So the landlord is held responsible, but the tenant who ran up the bill gets off scot-free and can go and rent another apartment somewhere else, and he can do the same thing to another landlord?
So I'll address that. When somebody comes in and they sign up for water and they're a tenant and they run up a bill and they leave that property and they go somewhere else. If they leave the city, you know, and they go rent somewhere else in a different city, then we don't ever see them again. But if they try to rent within the city at a different property, they do have to pay that lien or that delinquent amount before they can have water turned on in their name at any other property. So in that way, it protects the landlord. But in the other instances, if they just up and leave, then it does, yes, hold the landlord responsible.
So then it is your policy that the renter has the water bill in their name, not the landlord's name?
We have them, they do it both ways. Some landlords prefer to have the water in their name and have a tenant pay them the water bill and everything's in their name. Some landlords ask that it be put in the tenant's name.
Maybe you should mention about the notification.
Yes, so each time a tenant is delinquent, the tenant receives a delinquent notice as well as the landlord on every account that's delinquent. So they know, the landlord knows every time that bill has not been paid, and the delinquent amount, they get a copy of the same letter that the tenant gets. It's a notice, a 14-day notice of the amount, the time they have to pay it, and when water will actually be turned off. And they're allowed to, I mean, the landlords, because they own the property, they're able to call in at any time and check on their properties to make sure that they're either, if they're current or delinquent.
Do they have the right to have it shut off?
No.
Unless it's in their name. If it's in the
Yeah,
owner, if I own the building.
It's in their name.
If it's in my name, which I do, I have both ways.
The building or the
If
water?
I own a house and somebody's renting, the water bill is in my name, I can have that water shut off.
But you own the building and they're running up the tab. Your
If it's
building
in
is
my
going to
name,
get
I
a,
know it.
but the lien is going to go against your property. But you don't have the right to have that water
Not if
turned
it's
off.
in their name.
Is that something that could be addressed
I
and
think that's one
an
of the reasons
ordinance?
why we got put in that dissent decree, if I'm correct, back
Correct.
when it happened.
Yeah.
So that's not
Because-
something you can rewrite an ordinance for?
We can't tell the landlords what to do, can we?
You're doing that now?
We're in a lawsuit right now.
What we can do, when we write these new procedures, is we could give the landlords some relief in that they're notified when there's a delinquency. So the landlord should be responsible because at that point, by our law on that. But where, if the tenant now goes and wants to go to the utility review board, and they grant him relief, and he enters into a long payment plan, and he defaults, well, he could run up another several months before he's cut off. So we could write something in the policy, I believe, that we would not hold the landlord for those after he went to the utility review board and ran up an extra 3 months. Because I know what the landlords are saying, you should have cut him off at the delinquency, and that's reasonable to me.
And to address that too, we can also go even further than that and say, if you're the owner of the property, you can go to the review board and they can offer you a certain time of extension. If you're a tenant of the property, we can't do that because you're not the owner of the property.
All of these would take changes to our water
Right,
policy,
right,
which is
right.
a
They would
law.
have to go through policies, but those are
They
things
would
that we
need,
can definitely
these
look
four
at.
Which we discussed Tuesday, I'm bringing that up at our utilities meeting. When is that committee meeting coming up next week? Next week.
Yeah, I just want to make a few short statements. First of all, we don't get in this problem overnight. Probably 10 or 12 years. We have 6 city managers, a mess of councilmen coming and go. Council just makes the laws, we don't enforce them. I think the people want right now is 2 things. Don't raise the water and make sure everybody pays their bill. That's my position. Now, we gotta run this water department. Mr. Bolin is the CEO. He is in charge of everything, the top to the bottom. If the work doesn't get done, it's his fault. I'm the building principal. If the paper isn't picked up, that's my fault. Mr. Nelson owns his business. If it doesn't get sold, it's his fault. I don't care how he does it, it falls back on him. If she doesn't do her work, get rid of her, or anybody else. Furthermore, we're in a similar situation. We're going to need the cooperation of this council, the union, and the management, all working the same way. Because I'm at the point right now, maybe the city can't run the water department, sell it to a business place. I don't want to see the same thing happen to this city as happened to the mills, as it went down, down, down. I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, raise the price. That's not my job. I'm not coming to work. Don't call me out, I'm going home. I don't want to take no shower. It's a team effort, and everybody better get on board. He's the CIO, whether we like him or not, the boss, and he's responsible, and it's not an 8 to 4 job. 7/24. You get the job done. There's a lot of work, and we got the tools right here. Like Mrs. Curzell says, here's our Bible, follow it. Very simple. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. I'm a water customer in the city. I had a question as some comments came up relating to the county and the county auditor, because I have been involved in that loop, and I've talked to the auditor. I guess the first question is, can you add me how many accounts were turned over, City of Steubenville accounts were turned over to the auditor
For lien, 264.
recently?
Just in September.
Is that on a yearly basis, or?
That's any time you could file,
Right.
Commissioner, is September.
We filed 200 inactive and 64 active accounts. And our, I'm sorry, and the criteria for that was anything past 90 days and over $500.
And is the auditor working with you on addressing those issues?
Yes.
Is there anything the county can do better to assist you?
No, I don't. I mean, I think that they've been very helpful. They've met with us multiple times to go over any questions or concerns that we have.
Buy more water off of us.
I already took care of that. I don't know how many customers the city of Steubenville has. How many water customers?
About 7,500.
That's about the same size as the county system. The last time we turned something over was, I think, a 2-year period. We turned over 30 customers. But we have a pretty strict thing of, you don't pay your bill, your water's shut off. It's a real simple relationships, no questions, no exceptions, no anything else. We shut off, and I track this number very closely, almost to the number, 60 customers a month. And Dominic's been to some of the meetings and seen some of this, representing regional planning, not necessarily the city. Sometimes that number will be 56, but every month I ask the question, it's almost always 60. We shut off about 60 customers a month. 40 of those 60 will generally come in within a couple of days, pay their bill, pay their late fees, get the water turned back on. But the end result of that is, the last time we turned the list over to the auditor, I remember holding the list and looking at it. Names listed on the list. It was 1 page and half of an X. It was about 30 customers. And that was over, I think, a year, or at least a year's worth, and maybe 2 years. So that system seems to work. But the main thing is, if there's anything that the county is not assisting you with, anything that the county can help with this problem, if you don't get the right response from the assessor or the auditor, get to the commissioners, let us know. We'll do whatever we can to help.
Thank you.
In your report, weren't you recommending the idea of looking whether or not there should be liens like 3 to 4 times a year? And the mayor said that we're only permitted to do it once a
Well, to say
year?
that we could file the liens with our understanding with the auditor's office at any time. They don't get recorded until September. They're recorded annually once a year. And that's why I mentioned to the commissioner about a list now that the county.
Meters have already gone out, phone calls are being made, meters are already here, they're being installed daily.
And to hit 7,500 homes, you know how hard it is to go the first time and they got you there? How many
Well,
times
we
is that?
Good
also,
luck.
yeah, we have to, there has to be a chain of letters that are sent and phone calls made, and then they have to be scheduled. They have to find the time. They are working even after hours. They're working, they start at 8 o'clock in the morning, they work clear out until 6 o'clock at night. And they work on Saturdays. So they are, but they wanted to start out slower at first, just to see the response that they were getting on people that were, I wanted to get the meters changed out, but we want to do that cycle by cycle, and we don't want to rush things, we want to do it right.
And
Are
so
those-
I would say that since January 7th of 2014, the entire water system has been one of the highest priorities I've had since I've been here.
Okay.
Meters, infrastructures, main breaks, everything we need to do. And again, those are some of the things that we're implementing.
In the meters that you've changed, have you noticed a difference in the usage rate from what they were doing?
In our commercial accounts, definitely. And that's what we're getting readings on now. We spent most of 2014 on our commercial, what we call our large meter accounts, and replacing those in our corporation, our businesses, in that business community. And we have been seeing increases in usage of water. Yes. Residential, we're just getting into.
You're talking about a spot check, or whatever term you used of the meters. Would you call it a,
Random sample?
no, the
Recalibration.
recalibration? Isn't that done on site with a small gizmo that goes on a faucet and meters a measured amount of water? You put it on before, you put it on after? How else would you register a meter or calibrate a meter?
You can actually pull the meter.
Sure, and send it out, I understand.
Well, you can do it in-house too.
Can you
You
do it
don't
on
have to
site?
Do it now.
Not the big commercial meters.
But the
Like,
new
very few
residential?
people are equipped to handle that. You need a certified person that's able to have the equipment to certify like the 6-inch meters. Residential meters, you may want to consider at some point in time, if you do that in-house, and you just go out and random sample, you pull one and replace it. Person gets a new meter, and you get the old one, and then you check them, and you say, well, yeah, they're still accurate, so we don't need to do this, because now you have an inventory of when they were installed.
You can't do it on site though. They don't sell an accurate enough.
That's
I know.
outside the realm of my,
On University Boulevard.
Well, I will say some of the meters, when Neptune went out to actually survey some of the properties, some meters that they came in contact with, they had never seen before.
Because of age.
But yeah, because of the age that they were, I mean, we're talking like 1940s.
yes,
Most of them were the older meters, because I had mine changed a while ago, but they were brass. And then when they put the new one in, it was pot metal. In fact, they had to come back out because it was defect. Not since recently, not this new thing. But what are they doing with the old meters? Are they recycling it?
We actually, that came up actually a couple of times. You know, that's something that we need to meet on and decide actually what's the best.
Are they storing them right now? Or you-
Right now, every meter that's going in, if there's a meter there, it's going back into the box that replaced the meter. That way, they'll hold on to them for so long so that if there is any discrepancies as far as meter readings, we can go back into that box, pull that meter, and make sure that those readings were accurate.
If they do sell these eventually, 7,000 or how many, would that money go back into the water fund or would it go to general fund?
Yes. Go back into the waterfront.
Okay.
Absolutely. So it was generated and paid out. It has to, yeah. It's an enterprise fund.
We just have to determine what we can do with them. I mean, I don't know what all the options are there yet, but that's something that we would definitely, yeah, we would definitely look into.
Yeah, just to let you know, this is just my statement, and I believe that everybody here feels the same way that what I'm going to say. We figured there was a problem with the water, and that's why we all got together with this audit, and the performance audit came back with several recommendations, which we're all going to get together and try to implement as many as we can of them. Some of them are probably not going to be implemented because just we don't have it. But it opened up communication between the water department, between the review board, the council, and the administration. And I think that it's everybody's pledge in here that we're going to try to fix this as fast as we can to make sure it works the way it's supposed to work. And our concern is we have to look out for the city's welfare, which, when I say the city's welfare, that's you people. I'm part of it too. It's you guys. We want to make it fair for everybody to try, and I think everybody's tired of, picking up the tab for these things that are, if you're not getting the right amount of water and you're paying more for it, it's bad. But we all pledged that we're going to try to get the rate down if this in fact is true, which it does appear that isn't. Nobody here can, none of us are professionals, but we're hoping that is what the problem is those meters. So I think it's not going to be done Monday. It's not going to be done next Monday either. But I think our pledge is that we're going to implement these things and try to make it all work as fast as we can.
I'd like to say one more follow-up on that. Once you have the meters accurate and you know that they're accurate, then you can determine how much water loss is in those lines and how much you can reduce. Somebody had the question, how much can I reduce the flow at the plant?
Exactly.
Now you know how much is between
Yes,
meters
exactly.
and here. It's not the meter anymore. It's that line.
Exactly.
And then you can slow down your plant. Cut
Absolutely.
your electricity, cut your chemicals.
All the rest of the stuff, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just have something quick. I just think we need to, everything that you gave us in this report, I appreciate it. I think we need to prioritize what we have here and plan the work, then work the plan. And also, I think when we do prioritize, we take one at a time. And Kenny will attest to this, I say this all the time, we start on something and then we don't finish it sometimes. So I think we should take whichever one we prioritize to be the number one item on this recommendation list that you gave us. Finish that till it's all the way to the end, close that loop, and then go to the next one. But I think we need to do that going forward with this. And I thank you for all your help on this. And I learned a lot about water.
It's our pleasure.
And we're losing a lot of water somewhere, and I don't know where. If I did, we wouldn't get this problem, but
It's our pleasure, yes, sir.
thank you.
One more question. I'm looking at Appendix B.
Yes, sir.
Appendix B shows about 3 million in revenue that's greater than expenses per year in the three different, the water fund, the wastewater fund, and the refuse. Right, so we're 3 million ahead.
Okay. I would caution you on one thing. That's 2012. That needs to be updated.
Okay?
The audit for 13 is done, and, yeah, the audit for 13 is done.
Yes.
So that can be updated now. You can go to the Auditor of State's website. Just go to audit search. You can pull down the financials.
Okay.
And then that chart could be updated, so I'm cautioning you on that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to.
All right, well, so we are making more than we're spending on these things. And I know the city uses that money, and actually the money for the new infrastructure is a good thing. So I hope that continues. I think with this, that line should get wider, more revenue than expenses, and at that point you can reduce the water rates. Though I do have a question as to what happened in 2007. When you look at the water revenue in 2007, you were $5 million over what the expenses were.
There were some of us here, some of us, most of us were born in 2007.
Page 24.
We did a little research on that. You had a grant come in for your plant around that point in time, some federal money, up with the revenues, because that's revenue, all at one shot, that federal money.
I think we still was operating
Okay.
too.
Pardon?
I think we still was operating that.
No, that would have reflected in prior years too. It's not, I believe it was from the capital improvement grant that we received.
Right.
And it could have been for the construction also of the filtration plant on University
Right.
Boulevard.
And you received some in did you receive a settlement in 13 or 14?
We did receive a settlement
In 14.
yes, on the construction flaws with DLZ.
So you'll see that spike again in 14 when that audit's done, which will probably be within the next 4 to 5 months. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've been tracking the raise that they approved, the 650 into the infrastructure fund. And I've been working with Dave and Melissa and Tracy. And I tell you what, they brought in more money than I thought they were going to. So I just wanted to put some figures. Because it was only supposed to generate, I think, trying to think of the number. But as of, they put 500,000 into that fund, or 551 that came back from the lawsuit or something, into that line 47, Dave?
Yeah, to get some of the water line project started, they did an initial transfer.
The numbers, they're doing a good job, that's all I want to tell them. But I check it every month,
There's 2 recommendations I would like to reinforce, and then I'll stop. And those are strategic plan. So if you start to see your revenues increase, and maybe not your expenses, but we're suggesting that the city have a strategic plan for its water, sewer, and refuse, so that they are collecting the appropriate amount of money, which also ties to another recommendation in here, have financial policies. So you have financial policies, a strategic plan, and then you can decide the appropriate revenue. When I say you, I'm talking about, you can decide the appropriate revenue level, which will have an effect on your rates. So I'm just cautioning you on that. Yes, sir.
Going back to my question about liens and the water review board that I discussed there with the mayor, that property owner, we all got the email, half the city I think got the email regarding his complaint, much of city council and Mr. Boland, maybe the mayor last night, and Mr. Rapella's response to it today, about the $800 lien. He does own that property. He's owned it for 10 years, I believe, and was told to go back and see the water review board. So what response should he have at this point forward if he did own the property?
Pay the lien.
You don't know the lien.
He doesn't own it.
No, he doesn't.
That was the whole point of the email, was that he never knew who had the water. He never got word of the lien. I mean, you can go back and read the email, but it wasn't the case like Advance Auto that he recently bought it. And
I thought he owned the property and was renting. And then I was confused when he said he didn't know who the tenant was.
Right.
But if he owned the property, you should know who's renting your property.
I think his point also in that is that the tenant was not, this is going back, sorry, that he was not forced to bring a lease in. And so it was leased to a boyfriend of a girlfriend who skipped town. And
But Mark, even with that, we send out, I get them, if you're a landlord, you get a delinquent, the tenant gets a delinquent notice, then I get that delinquent notice. There's no excuse that you shouldn't have known that was going on.
would you have known that 3 years ago?
I believe so.
I mean, I would assume that.
You weren't getting that
coming
information?
on
I'm talking third party. I'm only
Yeah.
relaying.
It's not the review
Yeah,
I really do.
I don't think we're going to resolve that. I know.
It was very complicated, and I think the review board needs to go over all the facts. I read it a couple times.
But again, it's reviewing a
Maybe it was me, but I was confused.
We're using the review board to review historical issues, not a matter of whether or not a water should be shut off. Is one of my
That
points.
is according to Mr. Rapella today. An email I believe I received this afternoon, I'm not quite sure. No excuses for Mr. Rapella. His father did pass away. He came in to do a couple of quick things. They're viewing him this evening. I don't particularly agree with that email, and that's not uncommon. I do plan on having a conversation with Gary. Won't be until next week, tomorrow's services too. But I was kind of confused why he referred it to the Water Review Board. I think that's more of an administrative decision. And if it's going to be released, the council places these liens on the property too. There should be an action taken. But that's just my opinion. I did have an opportunity to talk to Mr. Rapella, so.
Yes, sir. You talked about on the blackboard those three entities, the water treatment plant and the residents. Now, my concern, which we haven't talked much about, was what's on the right, the water pollution control, right behind us on the highway. Will we have to address this issue sometime down the road? I know we got a long uphill climb. We're treating a lot of rainwater that comes off our roofs, like I did, divert my downspouts to my driveway and it goes down the street. However, once it gets into the sewer drain, it mixes in with the wastewater facilities under the ground. So they're treating not only my waste, they're also treating my rainwater. Is that something we have to address? Did you address it in this report?
We did not address that in this report. Right, don't hold me to this. That was not part of the objectives in this. We were looking more at the revenue cycle, if you will, of the utilities, and that's where our focus was. I believe the stormwater runoff is for populations currently, populations of municipalities over 25,000 in population. When I say regulations, that's EPA regulations. It used to be a much higher threshold, and then there's been, I think, 2 reductions in that threshold. I know they stopped at 50 for a period of time. Now they're at 25. So will you in the future have to address that? I think you probably want to take a look at that in your strategic plan.
And we have been, Jim, quite frankly, addressing that. Out the west end, we have property owners remove their downspouts and all from going into our sanitary sewer. And council's aware of that because we received over the years quite a few concerns when the residents had to spend the money to divert that water. So we are, the EPA is requiring us to meet some of those regulations already, and we have been doing it. A big project was on University Boulevard recently with the separation. It cost us $200,000.
And that's standard for any community. You have to reduce I&I. And you don't want to treat the rainwater, but it is a process, and it does cost a lot of money, but it's something we do look at and need to look at.
2 things before I wrap up. One, we will be back in approximately a year today, or a year, maybe a couple of weeks ago. We will ask the city what's been accomplished and what has not been accomplished. The reason we do that it'll be a public information. The reason we do that is twofold. One, we want to see if the city has done anything. But equally important is it's a quality control process that we go through to make sure that our product, i.e. the report, is actually of use to the citizens. Having said that, again, thank you very much. On behalf of the Auditor State's Office, it's been a pleasure to work for this community. Thank you.
Thank you.